Yo, Trev, you know what time it is?
Yes, it's showtime, Jay.
Hey, man, I believe that means it's time to get this thing rocking and rolling.
Yes, let's go. Hello and welcome to the Game Plan Show. Our show is brought to you by Bringing the Heat Media and D Athletes. This show is dedicated to using sports to create positive change. So be ready to get inspired, uplifted, and empowered through thought-provoking conversations specific to the world of youth sports with some of the top minds in the game. I'm your co-host, Trevor Rosenthal, MLB All-Star and single-season save record holder for the St. Louis Cardinals, with Jason Holzer, co-founder of 40 Athletes and best-selling author. Jason, we're in the middle of summer. I'm interested to hear how you're doing, first of all, but also, what are some of your favorite summer activities?
Hey, man, great to see you again. And, summer activities. You just got to go with being on a lake. I love being on a lake. And luckily, that's kind of where I move into a lake community, so it helps out. But water activities, being on a boat, fishing, had some fun time fishing here recently as well. And just slowing down a little bit. I feel like summer's a time you can just kind of it's active, but it's not as scheduled, right? So I think that's nice, at least from the non-major league athlete player perspective. That's not in baseball. But what about you, man? This is can you think what are some of your, if you could pick any summer activity yourself, what would be your go-to thing that you're yes, this is what I'm doing for a summer day?
Yeah, I agree with you. The lake would be up there, number one or number two. Love being on the water. There's something about it that's just relaxing, calming, bringing, just taking in nature and all that's out there for us to enjoy. And lakes, they give us all of that. So that's up there for me. And now, with this summer and being home from the baseball season, which I'm not accustomed to, this is a little bit different, but I've really enjoyed just spending time with my kids, and specifically as my kids have gotten older, they're into more activities. And recently, my oldest daughter, we went to a camp at a gymnastics camp at the University of Louisiana State, LSU University. They just won the national title last year for gymnastics, so my daughter was really excited. My wife and I made a really cool trip out of it. We went with another one of her friends and that friend's parents on the team, so we got to spend a lot of quality time together, and we really enjoyed it. And something that happened, I have to mention this. On the way back, we drove there. It's about a 4-hour drive. On the drive back, it's late at night. It's about 9 o'clock. We're driving down the road, about an hour away from home, and I get a flat tire. This is the first time I've ever had a flat tire. I was kind of scared, didn't know what to do. I'm like, okay, I can handle this. Pull off on the side of the road, find a nice lighted area, a gas station actually, to park. Started working on changing the tire and I was focused on changing the tire, so I wasn't paying too much attention to what was going on around me. And at that time, this car kind of zooms in, parks in the stall next to me, and they're blaring this really loud music that had some words in it that weren't appropriate for little ears to hear. And I look over and I see a guy and a girl, two adults in the driver and passenger seat, and then this little girl in the back seat. And I was just thinking to myself, man, how different is their life than my life? Two completely different ways they're going about living their life. And I had this, and I think this good. This comparison game in general is a good thing to do. I used it in pro sports to watch people that I wanted to emulate, to be like them, and watch mistakes people made to not be like them. So there was kind of that aspect, but I also saw the negative side of that, where we can be prone to think, oh, well, at least I'm doing better than they are. At least I'm not making whatever choices I think are bad that they're making, and kind of almost bringing my bar down a little bit. And it was just as I'm changing this tire on the side of the road and sweating out, I'm having this internal conversation with myself of, I'm just a competitive person by nature. Competitive, obviously, because of sports, but also just wanting to be the best person that I can be. And just having this, while I'm having these thoughts and this internal dialogue, I'm realizing, what areas in my life am I not challenging myself enough on, because I'm just setting the bar too low. I'm comparing myself to somebody else versus just comparing and just focusing on me and my life, and not worrying about what someone else may be doing. And so, I don't know, I wanted to share that story. I thought it was at least important to me when that all played out. And maybe one of the listeners can resonate with it as well.
Well, going back to that little bit, a fishing story, we were on a dock and we were fishing, and one of my sons caught one. And he was like, "Yeah, it's this big," and then my other one was like, so little brother was like, "I gotta catch a bigger one," and he caught a smaller one, right? But then he was so happy that he caught a fish too, and then at the very end, it was like fish with like this little 1-inch fish. I'm like, man, you know how hard it is to catch like a 1-inch fish? Like, it's gotta be harder to catch that than it would be to catch like something big. Like, their mouths are so tiny. Like you mentioned, the comparison game of like, hey, you know what? If you're giving your best effort, you reel it in, then that's all you can really do, though. So that's a good point, though, of like always trying to set yourself up to make yourself better for the next day. And, you can control what you can control, too, sometimes. So, as we move on, though, these interesting stories, Trevor, who's our shout out going to today for the show?
Yeah, glad you asked. A big fan of this company. Our shout out goes to Tomahawk Shades. They have a great deal going on right now where you can get 50% cash back on your first order, and they have any style to fit your needs. So be sure to check them out, tomahawkshades.com, and rock the Tomahawk. I know Jason and we've been rocking their Tomahawk Shades this summer.
Hey, my wife just bought her first pair, by the way, and so she's excited to get hers in the mail coming up too. So
awesome. All
right. Well, Trevor, who we got joining us today? Somebody that, you've been actually crossed paths with quite a bit with your time in St. Louis. So who's joining us today?
Yeah, I'm excited to have a conversation with a familiar face, somebody that has been in the professional athlete world and has done a great job in working alongside athletes. And so, we'll make an introduction here. We have Anna McDonald joining us today. Anna is the Director of Family Learning at Moneta and Athlete Family Office Services. Before joining Moneta, Anna spent 6 years at ESPN as a reporter covering Major League Baseball and the National Football League. So her work has also appeared in esteemed news publications such as the New York Times and Fox Sports and USA Today. So Anna, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really weird to be the person answering questions and not asking them. So I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah. Well, you sent me some really interesting articles that you've either written or that you've been a part of. And, one of them is your son played football, right? And you had to navigate some of the risks that were involved with it. You had to decide, hey, you know what? Is it, at the end of the day, is this worth my son playing football, regardless of what I already know is out there? So, that's a big hot topic debate, whether or not I should let my kid play this or that. What are the safety situations, that kind of thing, and concussions, right? That's also a big thing that's always talked about. But for you felt like football had the benefits that your son needed, including teamwork, camaraderie. For families out there that are juggling not just football, but any kind of sport for their child to play, what were some of the key factors in your decision-making process that could maybe help others make the best decision for their families, regardless of what sport it is?
Yeah, it was such an interesting time for us as a family and just honestly football in general. During the time, we let him play any sport he wanted, but nothing really caught his eye. He wasn't really interested in much. And so when he said he wanted to play football, he was in 5th grade. And, I had done a lot of work with concussions in baseball. I had done a lot of interviews, and this was before some of the rule changes to catchers and things that could be done at the plate. And a lot of what I did kind of, I want to say influence, but that was before those rule changes were made. So as a parent, I didn't just have this general knowledge of football kind of scares me. I literally had relationships with the top concussion experts in the country, some doctors who were just phenomenal. That was kind of my main thing that I reported on. And so when, it wasn't like just a normal parent who you kind of walk through life and you just kind of have some idea of what you see on TV. I had really deep knowledge of that scenario. And so, as a parent, I wanted to give him an opportunity to pursue what he wanted, but I also knew I wanted to give him an environment that at least had some benefits of success. And so what I did was I just kind of respectfully contacted the coaches in our area because, again, I didn't know what their philosophy was or what they were doing. And, I didn't do it in a way that tried to tell them what to do. I was not going to do that. But I just kind of tried to feel them out and discern, are they coaching in a way that's 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s, or are they up and coming with the safe ways to tackle? What is their stance on injuries, and just how they're coaching? Because especially in football, if you have a coach who tells his team to take out the quarterback by any means necessary, that was not something I wanted any part of. And I didn't feel like that would give him just a groundwork to succeed and be safe. So, after talking to the coaches, I was very confident that they were really in line with some of the newest techniques on tackling. And so I felt like we were able to make an educated decision with, everything in life has risks, and any sport that you put your kids in has risks. And, especially for teenage girls, soccer and lacrosse and, the concussion risk there is huge. And so, I had friends that walked through that. So I knew it wasn't just football. So, I kind of just believed that, I want to give my kids the best opportunity to be safe and succeed. And I felt like it was an environment that would do that. And it was interesting because as far as the benefits, I didn't know. Like I didn't, until you feel and live and experience something, I could make platitudes about, like you said, the teamwork and, what he's going to learn and the hard work and just being active. But I had never experienced it. So I didn't know what the benefits would happen. And so we really just made an educated decision knowing that, we were giving him the best opportunity to succeed while following something that he truly wanted to give a try.
Yeah, I'm interested too on the subjects. So I have 3 daughters. I'm not familiar with youth football these days, but as you had those conversations, I'm interested, were there other parents that had the similar concerns? And then as you went through those seasons and watching him play, were there some teams that did a better job of being up to speed with the newest techniques? Or I guess, can you just maybe say what that looked like I'm sure somebody that's new to this would be interested.
Yeah. So especially in football at that time, I mean, this happened when football was really under the biggest firestorm it had ever been. And it was when there were questions is it even going to be sustainable to keep football alive and well? So, when we were making that decision, that was on the foremost of every parent's minds. Everyone, there was kind of a divide in his class of those who let their kids play and those who didn't, and there were definitely very, very strong opinions on both sides. So, but yeah, as far as there's a huge discrepancy even today in just coaching and with football. And, it's like in any sport, depending on the coach you get, there's some really good coaches out there who really train themselves and really put their heart and soul into it. And there's some who maybe kind of have more just their ego involved. And that is still, very much in play today. And I do remember one game where the opposing team, he told his team to take our quarterback out no matter what, and there were some very, there was another scenario where there was a coach who he was so angry about something, the referee threw him out of the entire property of the stadium, and his kids, at this time it was 6th graders, so it was younger kids, they literally had to hold their own coach back from staying on the field. And these 6th grade kids told their coach to leave, please just leave us, let us play. And so it just, there's still this huge discrepancy in what you're going to get as far as people's attitudes, especially around football, because there are old school ways. There's old school ways of tackling. The newer ways of tackling really provide for, when you're not going for somebody's head, really works.
No, it's good to hear your perspective. And, it's appalling to me to hear stories like that. Throughout my youth sports journey, I think maybe I was just lucky. I wasn't exposed to kind of this win at all costs mentality. But today, to hear stories like that, and these stories, Jason and I are exposed to them more frequently as we've been doing this show, and it's out there. And I'm just wondering where the disconnect is, of where the people who are in charge of these youth development programs, where they're getting off track, and maybe at the professional level, the wrong example is being set. I'm not sure. Maybe, certainly looking to professional athletes is a good place to start and seeing what they're doing. But I think the circumstances you also have to take into consideration, right? These people, it's a career, it's a different type of competitive landscape. And at the youth level, sure, we're teaching competitiveness and how to play a game, but it's more about developing the skills and developing, in my opinion, really just developing the character of these kids to be able to have sports as a tool to learn like these important life lessons, right? Of being a teammate, of being coachable, of being disciplined, of learning how to learn a new skill, like practicing and then putting it into play and continuing to master your craft. And that goes, all those things, filter in to our self-confidence. And for me as a dad of 3 girls, I'm like, I just want them to have an environment where they feel, safe and loved and they can develop those self-confidence. So yeah, it's cool to hear you talk about that. I'm also interested to talk about the mental side of professional sports and of youth sports. And so I know, like, as parents and coaches, we want to know how professional athletes think. Like, this is something I get asked all the time, specifically in my role as a closer of, what are you thinking when you go out there and you take the mound? But my answer is more than just that moment. Like, it filters through a lot of different work. It's my whole day. Everything that I'm doing is to help me best succeed when I get into those big moments. And I love this quote by the great Yogi Berra. He's famous for saying that baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical. Or in other words, the mental game is more important than the physical game. And I've seen this, and I know that our thoughts and actions are closely connected. I've spent a lot of time trying to master my craft and be the best player that I can be. So I know we need to spend the same amount of time, intentionally evaluating our thinking as we do our physical performance. And this is probably why, like, the story of changing the tire, why I'm going and just thinking of, like, why am I having these thoughts and how can I use these thoughts to my benefit? But, like, early in my career, I heard Hall of Fame players like Adam Wainwright and Matt Holliday repeat, they would say, baseball is what we do. It's not who we are. And it's almost as a reminder to themselves, as well as, like, telling me and mentoring me. And I love this because it was, like, easy to repeat. Like, I just remembered it. It still sticks with me today. Baseball is what we do. Baseball, it's not who I am. It's just what I'm doing right now. And that allowed me to have the freedom to give consistent effort without the fear of failure, right? Like, I knew I was just going to do the best I could at what was in front of me right now, and how the results came wasn't going to affect my effort that I was going to continue to have. And I love this because I think it's very helpful in the youth sports world. And in my opinion, this is how coaches and parents should approach youth sports. But I'm just wondering, so for you, like, your career as a sports reporter and now a financial advisor working alongside professional athletes, you have the unique perspective of the human side of the sports industry. And so from what what are the most important lessons that you've learned from the sports world? And, like, what advice would you give to a parent or coach of a young athlete?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question. So I have found that professional athletes are really stubborn. And that kind of has a bad connotation, but it's really not. Like, it's just they're so focused. And when they get their mind set on something, it's really hard to change courses, which makes for a great athlete. Yeah. Right? You're so focused, you're locked in, you're dedicated. Professional athletes where you were all the things you were able to achieve, there were a lot of things that you had to give up. It's like, I see my athletes, they're hauling water out of their parents' basement when it's flooded in the winter, and they're just normal people. They have to pack up their truck when they get traded and drive across the country or get it, hauled across the country. There's a lot of sacrifices that come along with that. And so I think they're the most focused individuals I've ever met.
Yeah. It's almost like a superstitious part of it too. I know from my experience, I'm like, okay, I can't exactly explain to you why I had the opportunity to play in the major leagues. Like, it seems, like there was unseen forces at work that helped me to get there. But I don't want to mess that up. Like, I really am happy with how things have worked out. So the things that I've done to get here, I'm not easily going to be influenced to change those things, even if they aren't the best. Maybe even if I could do them better. So I think you make a good point in that, where it can be a good thing or a bad thing. But this is, I think, now as a dad, I see my kids and I see the influence that I have over them, and I want to be sure that I'm giving them the right information of, like, hey, like, you can constantly, like, life is all about, being able to change, and you're always kind of working to get better in all areas, and it's okay to go outside of your comfort zone here and there. So I don't know. Continue on. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was thinking. And it just, it's also, so very focused, as you said, but also, I think the ones that really get it realize that their life isn't, playing the sports that they're playing. And, I just remember David Freese, I did this huge article on the 2011 World Series. It was this huge for ESPN. And, he kind of at the end, I said, what do you remember about all this? Like, what's the one thing that, you've kind of seen influence your life? And he was like, honestly, that life is more than baseball. That there's a lot of things, and here's, think of all that you have accomplished, all that some of these great athletes have accomplished. And you think of what fans would think that how they would answer that question, and he's saying really it's who I am as a person and my family and what I value. And to me, that's kind of the crux of when you think about parenting and what we want our kids to do. It's really, yes, these sports, you can be really focused, if you're on that track to be a professional athlete, that's part of who you are, but also don't forget, it's really who you are as a person, and that, just to be a good human means a lot. And I think back to when we played football, our area where I live is very academic. It is not sports oriented, but somehow developed this community of basically Friday night lights in the Midwest of a really academic area of wealth, kind of more wealthy people who really weren't sports minded. And we had this little microcosm of a family that we came together during football, and there were some kind of going around in our city, there were some riots going on. And we actually played one of those high schools that were in an area that was really having a hard time and troubled. And so the parents got together and I said, why don't we all just donate some money and let's just have a meal together. And so I remember going to Domino's Pizza and I got like 200 pizzas, and they played football and they didn't know it was coming. But again, we're not this is not the middle of Texas. Everything does not revolve around football. You kind of play and you go on and that's it, And so this was really a unique concept that after the game, I had told our kids that we're going to provide a meal for the opposing team, and we had won. And so, I went up to the bus and to the coach and I was like, hey, we have some pizzas and we all made some homemade desserts and Gatorades. Do you guys want to stay and have dinner? I mean, the reaction from that team was something I will never forget. And also what happened was our team, we had them serve the other kids, and which is even worse for teenagers, is they had to wait to eat the pizza until the visitors ate. We're like, you guys are last, so they had won the game. They had to serve the other team, and then they learned, that they needed to eat last. And I hope, I don't know, but I hope that kind of like you were saying, that part of the sports world helped them be a better person and understand, sure, focused and be excellent at what you do and put everything into your craft and what you're doing on the field, but also remember that life is bigger than sports, and it really matters who you are as a person.
And Anna, I was kind of reminded me, I've been coaching 8th grade basketball the last couple of years, and on Super Bowl Sunday, we've been going and feeding the homeless and serving. And I'll ask them, hey, what was the most memorable thing that we've done this season? One of the teams, they ended up winning the whole thing, right? They were a really talented group of kids. Mm-hmm. And they're like, honestly, it was when Super Bowl morning when we went and we served the homeless. That was the thing that because it brought them together. It was a unique experience that, it made them, number one, more appreciative of what they have. And number two, like learning what it means to serve others, like be that servant leader, right? Not just a leadership that's like, hey, telling people what to do, but actually like being the example to other people. Yeah. So, which leads me to my question, like, what are some other great practices you've seen of athletes that build a strong sense of identity that, helps them realize too, like, hey, like this is just something I do. I'm not so attached to the outcomes and the results of this, where it really like sways my day either positively or negatively.
That's a great question. I'm actually curious what you guys say about that too. But honestly, there's not a lot that they can do. It's really, a lot of it is who they grew up with their family, what their parents were like, what the atmosphere was like. And really, if there's one thing I've seen, like anybody can give, anybody can started Donor Advised Fund, foundations are more challenging, but, there's all kinds of charity that they can do, but it's more than that. It's really, I feel like the one thing that grounds athletes is having one person or two people in their lives that will speak truth to them. And if an athlete does not have that person to just be there for them when they're stressed out and there's a question that maybe they don't want to run by anybody else, or they're getting influences, kind of in ways that aren't great, somebody that will speak to that. I mean, to me, that's the only factor that I can really see that, kind of from my experience, that really kind of helps them focus and keeps them from being, allows them to be a good person. I remember one conversation I had recently with somebody who is really spending too much money. I just said, and there's a risk for me saying something because, they could just never talk to me again. You could lose somebody as a client. So there's risk there, but I care too much about them. And I just really love this person. And so I want them to do well and be a good person. I said, I really want people around you who are your friends because you're actually an awesome person. And I want you to have friends that really like you for who you are and not the vacations that you're buying for them, not the rounds of drinks that you're buying from at the bars. Like, I want you to have people in your life who generally like you for who you are because you're a great person. And so I think the only thing I have seen is just really just having somebody in their life to really speak to them in an open and just, in a loving manner, just speak some kind of truth.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's the hard part, right? Is for us, for any kid, child, you don't get to pick who your parents are. You don't get to pick who your influences will be as you're growing up. And sometimes it just takes time for you to get into the right environment. But, in the same breath, there are, dads and moms out there like us, dads like me with young kids. And we have this opportunity, this big opportunity, right? Like to pass on good things and to teach good things and to be that positive influence. And that's it for me. And that's what I'm so passionate about. And it's been a journey, and being a professional athlete my whole life. And now finding myself at 34 years old with these little humans that I'm responsible for. And it's no longer just about me. And it's one of the biggest challenges that I've ever had. And it goes to kind of just what I'm talking about. I've really had to learn a lot of new things. Like I was fortunate. My parents were great. My parents did a great job, but I've also experienced new things and I've learned better ways, maybe some things that they just didn't know at the time when I was a kid. And so I'm fortunate at that, but the ball is still in my court. I can, continue to go and be just how I was 10 years ago, or I can make the choice to grow and learn and get better and pass those things along. So, I agree. I mean, I think it is a challenging and it's an interesting world, but being that voice, especially if you're a parent, like if you're a parent listening, a coach listening, like know how important you are and your decision to put in the effort and to put in the work to create a loving and safe environment, especially in the home, is what you need to focus on. It truthfully is. And if you're someone like Anna who has a role in athletes or in young adults' lives to speak into their lives and be a positive influence, you should do that too. So that's a great message, and appreciate you sharing that. And kind of on the same topic, I want to talk about like how you've handled these family dynamics and so your son played football, and do you have a daughter as well?
Yeah, 2 girls. Yeah.
2 girls.
Yeah.
So you have 3 kids.
Yeah, 3 kids.
Okay, so did your daughters play sports also?
So the crazy thing is that no, I mean, she played softball and we had golf and swimming. I always had them do swimming. We had them do, that's a safety issue. Like, I just think every parent should, your kids need to know how to swim really well. I think as parents, even before when you're getting married and you're talking about kids, I think people really need to talk through like the area of the country that they live. And that's going to really shape who your kids are to some extent. That's not saying that, if you live in Miami in Florida that you can't develop a professional hockey player down there, but it's going to be a little more challenging than it is if you're in Buffalo, New York, And so I just think the area where I live and where we raised our kids, it's very academic. I remember the first T-ball game we went to, it was basically like this grass field. And I was like, what is going on here? Like where I grew up, I mean, as soon as you can walk and, pick your hands up, you've got a baseball in your hand and you're kicking a soccer ball. I mean, I went to high school with David Freese and Ryan Howard. Like, it was so competitive where I grew up. And so, in this area, I was like, what is going on? Like, and so there were two things. One, my kids were not inclined, they're just more academic readers. We built Legos, we did the art museum, we did the zoo. They're just more inclined academically. And then two, it also didn't help that the area that they were raised in, it was really hard to find, just a basic kind of program to get them involved in all kinds of sports. So we weren't a huge sports family, which was, one of the crazy reasons when he said, I want to play football. Again, it's not like you've, been playing every sport under the sun and spend all your Saturdays at every practice and all of a sudden you're adding this was completely new. So yeah, the dynamics around just where we grew up, and I think as parents, it really does influence, what kind of vibe in the area that you live in do you want to raise your kids in? What are the people like? Because that's going to be your family, the people in your neighborhood and where you're growing, your kids are raising. Those are going to be your friends.
It's almost like there needs to be a book on like all these things that you have to learn the hard way sometimes. And I mean, even with like youth sports. So like one of the things that I see with families now is like, take your son, for example, of like, okay, we're going to put him into football and we're really excited and we're willing to make the sacrifices that it takes. But a lot of people get like kind of too invested or too excited to where like, if your son, Caleb, if he doesn't do well in a game or he's not having a good season, it's kind of like that seeps into our home life of like, oh man, like, why aren't you like this guy is doing that? You could be just as good as him, or you need to do this, and this in order to get to the next level. Like, hey, like we're sacrificing. Like mom and dad, we have careers and we're taking time away and we're spending our valuable money on these things, and you're not really holding up your end of the deal. Like, what's wrong? And for me, it's like that's the wrong way to even approach youth sports. It's like, hey, like we have this opportunity to develop character. Like, first of all, like just creating that trust that you were talking about of like, hey, my kids can actually trust that no matter what happens in their life, good or bad, we're going to be able to talk about it and figure it out. But on top of that, these are all teaching moments of teaching, how to give your effort and how to be a good teammate, how to be coachable, and how to develop self-confidence and just create a well-rounded person that, most likely we're not going to be professional athletes. We're not going to be David Freese and Ryan Howard and have these great careers. We're going to have to do other things in life. But sports translates very well. So, I mean, how did you have those conversations? I know like your career was demanding, right? And it still is. You're still very involved in your work. And what were those conversations like with Caleb and when you were making those types of sacrifices?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think my kids might have swung the other way because they grew up, I'm in carpool line. And I remember one time I'm like, okay, you guys all have to get out of the car because Tony La Russa is calling me and I really need to talk to him. So they were kind of almost more like sports are just annoying me because mom can't get me my snack after carpool line. So, and I think, a lot of kids who grew up in that, they embraced it. Mine kind of swung the other way because it was, as a reporter, you're just kind of on call 24/7. And if, Tony Roos is calling, I need to get the call no matter where we are. So, I think that was part of the dynamic of them growing up. I mean, they had great experiences. They were on the sidelines at NFL games. They had some really cool things, but they just didn't really care. So we, the conversations that we had with them are just more about, what they enjoy doing. And my approach to parenting is really kind of read the room, give them every opportunity. I was enrolling them and stuff. They didn't have a choice about what I enrolled them in. We did soccer, we did softball, we did baseball, we did golf, but I kind of read the room. And if, they need to give it a try, but if it's something they're really not embracing, like I'm not gonna push them. And I do think that as parents, a lot of times we get caught up in maybe what we want for ourselves and project that onto our kids. And then also, social media right now is really hard. It's for parents, I think more than any other, for parents with young kids, social media right now is a huge issue, because you're dealing with, moms who are baking sourdough bread and doing cut flours and showing how they're hauling their kids to, to practice and feeding them homemade sourdough afterwards. I mean, like, come on, that's just so over the top these days. So I think, it just snowballs into these expectations, and, you just kind of, again, just read the room. Like, your goal as a parent is to give your kids wings to fly and become their own person. Like, who do they want to be? Like, what do they want to develop? And a lot of times that's completely different than what I thought they would develop, and navigate to things that they really enjoyed and wanted to do. We did absolutely make them play a sport in high school. Again, I know, a lot of your audience is more select sports and people who are really into that. I'm coming from a different perspective, that we really believe sports were important and that team aspect was important, and they had to, at least play one team sport. And the interesting thing about football is, I think, why you see even kind of some of the more not ideal coaching is that, and Howie Long told me this once, because when I asked him just about the state of football and does he think that it'll ever not exist, and he said, no, it'll always exist. Because he said, even for me, like, I grew up in a one room house, and I had no opportunity. My only opportunity of getting out was football. And so there's a different dynamic, I think, with football than baseball, because if you don't have baseball, you really need the skills. Like, football, you can develop, like, a huge guy on the line can really develop a place on a team and be a really powerful force for that team without having great fine motor skills, and so it just, football brings a different aspect to it. And you get a whole kind of diverse mix of talent, because it really is a way for a lot of people. It's kind of their way out to kind of maybe a different livelihood. And so, we had a lot of conversations about, just maybe things that they want to gravitate to and what they enjoy. But I didn't push them to, my own ideas of what maybe I wanted my kids to look like. I'm happy with who they are. All I wanted them was for them to be happy and confident in who they are and to be a great person. And so, I think as parents, that's something we really, really need to, especially right now with social media, just focus on your sweet kids, and what is best for them, because they don't have anyone else fighting for them. It's the parents that are going to fight for them. So there's so many pressures at school. There's so many pressures in sports that they're playing, on those travel ball teams. It's just, the pressure is there. So at home, make it an environment where it's the place where, you can just give them love and encourage them and not push over the top expectations on them.
Yeah. Well, Anna, it's been great having you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Our final two questions are, number one, how can people connect with you, learn more about the work you're doing? And number two, any final last words of wisdom before we let you go today?
That's great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I love these conversations and respect both of you guys, everything that you've done. And I just, having little kids, because my kids are older now, and you really, those formative years before high school, that's your time to really speak into, just their minds and who they are, because they're formable then. Once they're teenagers, you really, it's not to say you don't have any influence, but it's really, they're teenagers. I love the teenage years. I know we talked about this. I absolutely loved, my favorite pictures in my entire life are of literally 100 shoes in our foyer, because all the kids are in the basement or in the pool, like those. Like, there's something so great about being able to host teenagers and have them at your house. And, but as far as like who they are as a person, so much of that comes in first grade and second grade, in, letting them understand that, well, if you're at the pool, let somebody else go first on the slide or this diving board, just don't make it all about them. It's just, those are the formative years, because then when you get to high school, really it's just hosting, providing a safe place, and being a sounding board. And so you guys are in the thick of it with, the ages you have. And it's such an awesome, it's your kids are lucky that they have such a great environment. There's nothing, I don't regret anything I ever did for my kids. And you guys would say the same thing. There's no regrets with giving 1,000% to your kids. Like, that's my only job on this earth, really. So, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I
And then
love
just,
that. Thanks for the time. I feel
yeah,
like
thank you guys.
so encouraged right now. I'm like, hey,
Oh.
like,
Yeah.
this is a highlight of my day, and hopefully the listeners get that too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if the kids are ever driving you crazy, just let me. I'll send some encouragement your way. So
Yes.
they grow up way too fast.
It is.
Way
It
too
is.
fast.
And that's where I'm lucky,
Yeah.
like, talking about my career and having this time to be at
Oh
home.
my
I'm like,
gosh. Yeah.
I could think like, oh man, poor me. Like I don't get to play
Yeah.
baseball or,
Yeah.
do what I love. But,
Yeah.
I think when would I otherwise have this time to be a
Yeah,
dad
yeah.
and to really,
Yeah.
in these formative years. And I appreciate you pointing that out because it's coming. My oldest daughter's 10. She's going to be a teenager.
Yeah.
She's going to be in high school and the clock is ticking. So
Yeah.
it's always
Yeah,
a good
you really-
reminder.
Yeah, you worked hard to accomplish all you did, and now it's just what a great opportunity to be there with your kids and see their games. And I remember Scott Rowland, I was talking to him, and I was like, well, are you going to coach ever? And he's like, I'm really enjoying being with my kids right now. When they're older and teenagers, I might coach to get out of the house because they'll probably be driving me crazy. That's just such a great, you worked hard to accomplish everything you did, and you should be able to enjoy the time with your kids.
Well, thank you so much, Anna.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much for the conversation.
And great show, Jason. We have a lot of guests coming up on the show. They keep getting better and better. So make sure that people check out 4dathletes.com. Check out the resources for parents, coaches, and athletes. And remember to follow 4D Athletes and Jason on social media as well.
Yeah, Trevor, man, great show again as always, and I'm excited for more of our guests we have coming up. Like Anna, loads of wisdom, a lot of fun, and just a great perspective on sports and what the true value of it is, helping people become the best version of themselves. And make sure you follow Trevor on social media, especially because if you want your kid to follow somebody worth following, you got to give Trevor that follow as well. So that's a wrap on this episode. If you liked the episode, give us 5 stars and leave a review. Thanks for tuning in to The Game Plan, and we will see you next time.
Great.